video, I want to discuss a model, a student's model on the generic analysis on the websites. And I asked you to look at those 15 websites and to find common similarities and then an in-depth similarity. The first thing I want you to notice is that the student has produced enough information. There are enough lines to meet the basic requirement for the assignment, so that's good. Second thing is there are very little surface mistakes. I mean, there's one right here. And then there's one right now. This is a problem because the computer is not going to recognize this. You know, this needs to be, because CITES is a word, you know, to cited quotation. But this needs to be SITES. So there are some issues, just a little bit, but most of it's clear. There was a good job done here to describe just general information of an average online news site. Now, if you want to read this, you should expand the screen and pause it. But what I want to do is I want to use these models to show how the students really came up with something in depth down here. Now, this was hard to do. It was easier to think about and to imagine doing than to actually go and find that depth, you know, characteristic. But let's read what this person said. Many of these news sites contain so much information that people may not even realize all the stories and news they offer. For example, I've noticed in some of the news sites that the Penn State incident is still being talked about and followed. It happened over a year ago. The coach was fired, and it is inappropriate what the coach has done to some of the boys over the years. It is not a bold or all fancy lettering. Now, what is it here? The story, right? But there is an it up here too. And there's an it right here. So this should be something like the story. The stories are not okay. But to read first. But if you observe some of the sites, you will see that something related to Penn State. Now we need to fix this. So with the sites, what the student is pointing out here is interesting. Now I'm not sure if the first sentence has anything to do with that, so I would have erased that. Okay. Now let's continue reading. Many people aren't really thinking about the Penn State coach incident anymore. There are bigger and more serious news happenings around the world, especially with the recent hurricane. Okay. Although this was a terrible thing the coach committed, I feel they are still following up on the story to notify the public he is being punished. Okay. You know what I wish the student had done? I wish the student would have generalized this a little bit. Maybe come up with a paradigm here and thought to himself, you know, what if certain news sites are committed to following certain stories way past their newsworthiness, okay, the window in which they truly are breaking news. And maybe you could have given a name to that, something like the persistent story syndrome or something like that. And you know what's happening right now with Fox News? Fox News is covering a certain story, and they're not letting it go. I mean, this thing happened a month ago, and they're still, every day, they're putting up pictures to cover this story. Maybe 2 months ago it happened. So this happens, and it's not easy to see, the persistent story syndrome. Why would some news sites decide to do this? That's the question. So the merit of the student's work right here is that this student really did find a depth insight that I would think is truly a depth commonality. All right. So I read some work where they're like, well, it has weather stories and this is a depth commonality. No. That's an average thing. Okay. Or they use pictures of you know, with people facing the camera. Well, no, that's average. Okay, that's common stuff. You got to find something that's harder to see, right? But that's there nonetheless once you recognize it. So this student's work had some issues on the surface level, right? The misspelling and stuff like that. That can be fixed through revision. I think the student is more on track with finding that depth insight. So I probably would have given this around a 3.5 or a 3.6, something like an A-.